Sunday Witkowski with Focus Life Coaching. I want to talk to you today in keeping with our theme for April on new growth. We've been having some videos, our blog posts, several of our Facebook posts have all been about new growth for this month. Something we forget sometimes that has a lot to do with new growth is disappointments and disillusionment in our lives. You've been really praying about something. You've been believing, you've been enacting your faith. You've been walking in faith, talking to God about this thing, and for whatever reason, it falls through. And our first knee-jerk reaction is that somehow our faith wasn't in line, we weren't praying in God's will, we did something wrong along the way while we were going about praying for this situation, then it didn't work out. That's not the case. It only takes a mustard seed of faith for God to work in your life. What happens a lot of times that squashes our faith is when a situation like that comes, that's the time to get your smile back out, put your smile back on. That's what I posted on Facebook today. Really decide, and this is a rough decision, and you have to spend some time with yourself to make this decision. But really decide that you are not going to be disappointed. You are not going to complain. That you are not going to listen to all the voices that tell you you failed, that tell you I told you so. You're not going to throw a pity party. Those are all things that you're taking off the to-do list. You are going to demand from yourself to go back to joy. And I don't mean just fake joy where you're feeling all this, because I did this for years. You're feeling all this turmoil in the back of your head, and instead of turning around and facing it and dealing with it, you just, I'm not supposed to feel fear, I'm not supposed to feel this way, so you just ignore it and pretend that that's not really happening inside of you. That is not dealing with that. You have to look at that disappointment straight in the face and say, I choose not to entertain you. Not even in the back of my head. You're going to have to go, because this joy over here that I already have, this joy that Christ has given me, it's already here. This peace is already here. This is what I choose, and this is what I'm going to live out. And you have to make that decision. And you have to spend some time by yourself, with yourself, making that decision, making that choice, turning that corner. It's not going to happen on its own. And it's not just going to happen because you realize you're upset and, oh no, I'm not going to be upset because I'm not supposed to. No, you have to deal with yourself until you've dealt with that feeling. And you'll know. Be honest with yourself. You know when you have truly dealt with it. In every garden, we have to go through the garden. We have to pull some weeds. Sometimes even fruit that's on a plant, we have to pull off because we can see when it's growing it's not going to do well. And that fruit we have to discard. I remember the first year I planted strawberries. In the pamphlet about growing strawberries, it said the first year you pull off all the flowers. You don't let any strawberries grow, and that will make your crop the next year tremendous. That was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because the first year I put my strawberries in, the plants were beautiful. I had 1,000,000 flowers. It just was so healthy and coming along so well, pulling off all those flowers. And if a little green berry did happen to come, I had to pull that off. It was so irritating. A whole season, big, beautiful plants, tons of flowers, no berries. But then when the next season came, I was so glad, because my plants were everywhere, spread out, took over the whole garden. We had more strawberries than we knew what to do with. We gave them away to everyone. Sometimes God does this in our lives. He calls it pruning. He cuts things back a little bit. Please believe that when Daniel was thrown in the lion's den for praying, before all of that happened, before he got there, when he was praying, he did not want to get arrested for praying. He did not want to have to go to court for praying. He did not want to have to be sentenced for praying. All of those steps happened before. They didn't find him praying and throw him immediately in the lion's den. There were some series of steps that happened before he went to the lion's den. Every series of steps, he was praying for release. He was praying for God to come and help him. And every time it seemed that God was saying no. Then he went into the lion's den, has done everything correctly, and still in the lion's den. And that's where God was glorified. And the same thing, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They went through all of these things for doing the right thing. They were ridiculed and put on trial and had a sentence pulled against them. And please believe they were praying every step of the way, and the answer continued to be no. Until the end, they're thrown into the fiery furnace, and all three of them walked around in a fiery furnace with God and were pulled out and were saved. And that's when God was glorified. And this happens a lot to a lot of people. Sometimes, though, we get in the way of the process. In the very first step, we are hampered or held back. It looks like our prayers weren't answered, and we fall apart. I don't have enough faith. I'm not doing it right. God isn't listening to me. Or maybe even God isn't real. He doesn't even hear me because we were disappointed. But what God is waiting for is for you to step through that situation with faith and anticipation and expectation for what's coming next. What is coming next for you? What is God doing? Wait for that. Expect it. Let us know when it happens.